Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to our Permobil Academy webinar series. Today's webinar is the Wheelchair Handbook, a consumer's guide to seating and mobility equipment. My name's Brenly Mogul-Rotman, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. I also have Mitch Falkenberg as a co-moderator with me in the background.
I just wanted to share this image here. Permobil, one of our values is really innovating for individuals. And while today is not talking about a brand new specific product, education is one of our innovations as well, and providing you as a consumer, or if there are clinicians as well and providers, with resources to help you better understand this complex world of complex rehab technology. And I love the picture that I put here as the header. This is Eric Hawk. He is a gifted musician and guitar player with Portugal the Man. And, you know, what his story has showed us is that while, you know, the right equipment is not going to all of a sudden make everyone a rock star, it can, when you have personalized and individualized equipment, it can actually really assist you to achieve whatever goals that you might be setting for yourself. And knowing about your options just gets you closer to whatever you would consider as those rock and roll dreams. So thanks for joining us today. And as Brenly said, my name is Jenith Bernstein. I'm a physical therapist, and I am a clinical education manager for Permobil. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm actually broadcasting live from Jackson, Mississippi today, but cover the Southeast for clinical education. And I've been with Permobil about 5.5 years now. I formerly worked at a spinal cord injury center in Atlanta, Georgia. And so always loved doing all types of education. This is what we're considering consumer education, and this has always been my favorite part. So I'm really excited to share everything with you today. This is Amy Burnett. I don't know if you want to try to unmute and say hi. Amy is going to, there you go. So Amy is going to be joining us throughout the webinar, but specifically for the Q&A section at the end. And Amy joins us to really provide additional insight on the importance of understanding your role in the equipment and mobility equipment process. She's the director of the Tennessee chapter of United Spinal. She's a board member of the Permobil Foundation and USA Badminton. She's a current USA athlete, Team USA athlete for pair badminton. And Amy, thank you so much for joining us from your RV in the middle of nowhere. And we appreciate all your insight that you're going to share with us today. And if you guys have questions for me and Amy, or Amy, we'll be here. We'll specifically reserve that time at the end. So we're gonna, anything else you want to say, Amy, before we get started?
Thank you for having me here today. It's quite an honor to be invited, and this is a special occasion. A consumer's manual to buying a wheelchair. Wow, that would have helped me out 25 years ago. So I'm excited to be here today. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully it's a good start, and we can always learn and keep building off of this. So thank you. I'm going to go ahead and hide my webcam, and then we'll come back on during the Q&A. And if you want to do the same, Amy, go right ahead. All right. Perfect. So as we usually like to start a lot of our webinars, we really want to make sure that you all understand Permobil's mission. And at Permobil, we believe that every person has the right to move regardless of their ability or disability, and not just to be moved, but move themselves. And, you know, we really believe that having the right equipment is not just medically necessary, but a basic human right. And we want your mobility solution to take you to exciting places and do things that you didn't know were possible. And so we want to make sure that you have a better understanding of the equipment you use on a daily basis. And we hope that what you learned today gives you a deeper understanding of how to obtain new and replacement equipment, how to discuss your needs with the team members you're going to be working with, understand what Permobil solutions are available to you, as well as provide you with resources for funding, advocacy, learning wheelchair skills and maintenance, and then what to do, you know, after you have your equipment. And this is just a picture of Per Uden on the left-hand side of your screen. That is our founder. He's a Swedish physician, and so he really set the stage for all the great work that Permobil does today. And I do see that some questions are coming in, and please go ahead and add any questions that you would like. If we don't get to them live, we will be sure to follow up via email. So really what we're going to be doing today is we're going to go over what's inside this wheelchair guide, or what we're calling the Wheelchair Handbook, a consumer's guide to seating and mobility equipment. And so we'll talk about what is this guide, the terminology that we're using and the mission of the guide, what's in it, going through that process, equipment specifics, and then we'll go to the interview with Amy and the Q&A. So just a few kind of housekeeping introductory items to talk about. We really are choosing to use the word consumer throughout this guidebook or handbook that we created. And we use that specifically in place of terms like end user, patient, client, rider, person with a disability. You know, there's a variety of ways that people select to be identified when it comes to their mobility or disability. And what we really felt like this handbook really related to the term of consumer as a person who's involved in the economy of a country. You have control over the goods and services that you purchase and you select. You have consumer rights to understand, to have safe equipment, reliable equipment. And really, to us, it emphasized that this equipment is not just provided to you. You are an integral part of the process, and equipment is not just completely decided upon by someone else. So hopefully this message definitely gets across. And in this handbook, you know, you'll see if you decide to request a PDF copy or a hard copy, it is about 100 pages. And while we would have loved it to be 300 pages, we did have to select just a few pieces of equipment for each category. So if you're wondering, well, where is this chair? Where's this cushion? Where's this backrest? You know, we couldn't include every single product that Permobil offers, but we hope to keep building on this and give you additional resources. And of course, the legal disclaimer here that the information in this document and this webinar as well is not intended to be billing or legal advice. The information that we provide is not guaranteeing funding from any source, US or Canada or abroad. The coverage information, for specific coverage information, you always want to verify the policy with your provider or with your healthcare company. So just have to make sure we get that out of the way. And here's our graphic for the wheelchair handbook. I love this. Thank you so much to our marketing department and Katie for this excellent design. So what's inside? So we wanted to really give you a resource to help you prepare for an evaluation, whether that's the first time you're getting equipment or whether you need repairs or replacement. We want you to be able to take this with you to an appointment with your doctor, take this with you to an appointment with your clinician at a seating clinic or at an outpatient facility. Give you terminology that the assistive technology professionals, a lot that are on this call, they are familiar with, and now you have access to some of those terms. We want you to feel empowered, to be educated before your appointment time comes, and really be able to discuss things that maybe would be ruled out due to traditional funding. Like on the surface, we might not have given all these options, but now you have access to them. You know what they are, what they might be used for. We're going to, a lot of the products that will be highlighted, we're going to have a focus on potential health benefits, social engagement, and ways that that equipment can help you increase function. Now, when you see these little pop-outs, like you see at the bottom right of this screen related to the Permobil VS leg rest, which is a power adjustable foot plate, not all of these potential health benefits or functional benefits are going to apply to you alone. You may find one or two little nuggets that will be helpful to you. So just keep in mind that this was intended to be quite general, and not every single thing listed will always apply to you. You're also going to see throughout the document some little helpful tips and some little did you knows and some a lot of quotations and beautiful photos of some of our Permobil ambassadors and representatives and models. So you'll see these little tips throughout the document. We do have the different colors associated with some different chapters. So just a little preview of what's inside. So the very first chapter, we wanted to make sure that we emphasize that you have the right to choose what equipment is recommended for you. You are an active, we want you to be an active and informed participant. We want to when you're going in for an evaluation, we want to really respect your needs, values, challenges, routines, preferences, and the more you share that with your team, the better the outcome will be. So your right as an individual is to select your clinical team. So you're going to have usually an OT or a PT, you're going to have an equipment supplier or provider, or sometimes that's called a dealer. And then you can specify exactly what piece of equipment you're interested in. You can say, I would like a Permobil Smart Drive. I would like a Tylite ZRA. You can specify that. And you want to make sure that you, of course, obtain copies of any of these recommendations. You want to evaluate that all of that equipment that was recommended for you is present upon the delivery. You want to understand how to use and maintain all of this equipment. So you are your own advocate, and we hope that this guide empowers you to continue that. Now, when we go through some of the funding and the processes, keep in mind that within the U.S., there's a wide variety of policies related to Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, private insurance, workers' compensation. Just as in Canada, there's a variety of provincial funding, private funding, workplace safety and insurance board funding and policies. And so there are going to be different guidelines, rules, and regulations, but the goal of this guide is to give you just a little hint of that, while also really speaking in general terms about what this equipment can do for you. Chapter 2 is going to really be talking about the process to obtain equipment. You're going to see the two sections, new equipment and then replacement equipment. So just as an example, step 1 is really preparing for your visit, understanding your team members, selecting your equipment provider, selecting your clinician that you're going to work with. You want to complete a self-assessment. So ask yourself, where do I need to go? What do I need equipment to do? What terrain am I going to be on? What's a comfortable position for myself? What's my skin history? What's worked for me? What doesn't work for me? Or what questions might I have if I'm brand new to this? Then you also want to make sure when you're preparing for your visit that if you do have a specific funding source, that you call that funding source or look up in your policy to have a good idea of what will and won't be paid for and covered, so we know how to move forward and give alternatives. And then the second step is pursuing a physician referral. And again, this is only required by certain funding sources in the US and certain provinces of Canada. It's not always required, but typically what happens is a physician, a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant will give you a referral or a prescription that says PT or OT evaluation for wheelchair, PT or OT evaluation for seating and mobility needs. So that initiates your ability to then go get your evaluation. And of course, the physician is integral in signing off on a lot of paperwork. So we want them in certain countries and certain funding sources. So we want them involved from the very beginning. Then you have a specialty evaluation. Now, this is required because all of the products we're talking about today are considered complex rehab technology. If someone needs a very basic transport wheelchair, a temporary wheelchair for a broken hip or a hip replacement, they don't have to go through all of these steps. They can get a prescription from their doctor and just go buy one and they'll bill insurance. But because we're talking about complex and customized equipment, The specialty evaluation is going to look at your posture, both sitting and laying down, look at your strength, your skin, your range of motion, your muscle spasms or spasticity. Keep in mind that if you don't know your weight, you may be asked to transfer out of your chair to get weighed so that the appropriate equipment can be selected for you. You also may be asked to transfer out of your chair for that posture evaluation, as I mentioned. So be prepared with the equipment that you need, or make sure you have someone there to assist you, or make arrangements prior to. Then you will work and select your equipment provider. And again, in the US, we have assistive technology professionals, ATPs, that are required for funding sources like Medicare. It's not required for all funding, but you want to find out from that provider, what's their service policy? What's their range of travel time? How often would you have to wait for repairs? Do you offer loaner equipment? And kind of find out how they operate their business to best, and make sure that it best meets your needs. And then also, what equipment are they used to working with or working on? Can they provide any brand of any product that you might need? Then you're going to have an equipment evaluation. This is often called a demo or a trial. This could be done the same day as your PTOT evaluation. Sometimes you may be asked to come back another day if all the options are not available for you to physically try on that day. And if maybe there isn't a size available that would fit you, either larger or smaller, there should always be equipment available to visualize, even if that physical trial is not available. You shouldn't just, say, sure, give me that shirt, and you have no idea what size, what color, what cut, what size the sleeves are. We're not going to do that. We're going to want you to actually be able to at least see, if not feel and touch and sit on demo and trial equipment. And then what happens is that you start the recommendation and selection process. This is where you specify exactly what frame, exactly what model, exactly what cushion, size is all measured to your body measurements. Usually you'll have measurements taken of your body that are then translated into equipment measurements. Again, so you are going to have someone that is using a yardstick, a ruler to take measurements of your body. So it may require them to be in close contact with you. And then at this point, you want to be discussing potential insurance coverage, out-of-pocket expenses, alternative solutions, and then obtain a copy of whatever those recommendations are. This is also a good time to make sure that your equipment fits in your home and your vehicle, especially if you have existing living environment or an existing vehicle that you're wanting to transport this in. Also keep in mind that I mentioned earlier, we may ask you for your weight or to be weighed, and this is critical for safety and performance of the equipment, because we want to make sure that the equipment can last and be durable and meet your needs. But there are certain components like cushions, like a Rojo cushion, that has no weight limit when appropriately sized. So that is critical to the process. Then your provider, your equipment provider, is going to help coordinate necessary documentation from your clinicians and your doctors. Then they're the ones that actually submit that to your funding source. And then you and the equipment provider will be notified of what's covered and what's not. And then your equipment provider will provide you alternatives. Would you like to pay out of pocket? Would you like to pursue alternative funding? Then once everything's approved and ordered, you want to go back to an OT or PT with your equipment provider to fit all of those components and be trained on how to use all of that equipment. And then that final delivery occurs when the new equipment or the replacement equipment is at your house being finally delivered. They hand over the user manual, owner's manual, go over maintenance, and that's kind of the final process. And then you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on maintenance, repairs, and then when to return back to a therapist or a provider, which we'll go over towards the end. So that is the main process when you're obtaining new equipment. When you're obtaining replacement or repairs, we still want you to be thinking about a self-assessment. So what environments did that equipment work best for you? What did you like? What did you not like? What would you like to keep the same? What would you like to change? When it comes to repairs, some repairs do require a physician prescription. Some will require a reevaluation from an OT or a PT. The repairs that insurance traditionally pays for are things like normal wear and tear, loss of tire tread, batteries, motors, things like that. And then when it's time for replacement equipment, the rule of thumb, and this isn't always, but typically they're looking at, does it cost more to repair the equipment than it does to replace? And so a lot of you guys asked, how often can I get new equipment? In the US specifically, a lot of times they follow Medicare guidelines where they start to look at new equipment about every 5 years. That's not all funding sources or all locations, but that is always flexible if you've had a change in condition, weight loss, weight gain, you had surgery, rod stabilization, backlift and pump placement, if you have new onset of a pressure injury, or if for some reason your equipment is no longer being manufactured, can't get parts for it, that will also be able to override that 5-year mark. And it's not to say you can't pursue equipment earlier than that, that's just a guideline. So then we're going to get into the chapters that are specific to each type of equipment. So you'll also see a lot of our Permobil ambassadors highlighted throughout the document. And I love this quote from Jake. He's actually from Australia, and he was featured on a previous webinar that we had. And what he says is that no matter what end of the spectrum of life you're on, the wheels keep moving forward. Time doesn't just stop for me, you, or anyone. So we keep rolling. And so you'll see lots of great quotes about how different people are using Permobil equipment. So in the power chair section, we're going to go over why to select a specific base configuration, and that means where the big wheel is, the drive wheel is. Then we're going to talk about seat functions like tilt, recline, active height, active reach, standing. We'll also highlight connected technology such as the My Permobil app, Bluetooth mouse emulation. Then we'll go over accessories, things like lights, trays, and we also have a special section on pediatric solutions. And this is not all inclusive, just giving you guys a kind of an overview. So within each section, you are going to see a description of the product, as you see on the right side here. What is the power adjustable foot plate height? So it's going to explain what that does. And then on the left, you're going to see a little call out where you'll see the potential health benefits. So for this specific product, changing that foot plate height can help with pressure redistribution, can intermittently reduce pressure from the bottom of your feet or the back of your knee or thigh. It can help increase sitting tolerance. Again, remember that's just general, doesn't necessarily mean it's true for everybody that's listening in today. And then social engagement. How does this help me when I want to interact with other people in the community, with my family? Well, it might mean that you can get underneath a table that maybe you didn't think you could, because you can change that, you can lower your footrest height temporarily, or you might wear heels one day or steel-toe boots one day and then flats another day, and this will allow you to easily make adjustments for your clothing that you select. And then functional activities, it might help where some certain wheelchair bases allow that footrest to lower all the way down to the ground. So it can help with transfers. So you'll see examples of this throughout power, manual, seating and mobility solutions, and you'll see those 3 categories as they are applicable. Again, here's another quote from Landon. He's highlighted in the standing power wheelchair section, so you'll see lots of great quotes and feedback about how people are using that equipment. And then we also want to highlight that programming is a critical part of power mobility. So we want to go over Bluetooth, infrared solutions, making sure you're looking at speed, acceleration, memory positions. In the manual wheelchair section, we're going to talk through folding and rigid, compare and contrast. We'll talk about some of the different frame materials that are available to you, aluminum, titanium, and also components that are available in carbon fiber, titanium, aluminum. We'll talk a little bit about what is a made-to-measure frame. Why is it important to take my specific characteristics? And then we'll talk through some of the shaping of the manual wheelchair. Why would I need taper, V-front? And then we have a section on accessories like push handles and carrying bags and luggage carriers. We also have a highlight on ergonomic seating, where we do show those health benefits, social engagement, and functional activities again. So that ergonomic seating for Tylight is where the back of that seat is flat, and it really helps some people to have take deeper breaths, to feel more stable, to really be able to use any kind of trunk or core musculature that you have. Again, a quote here from Seth, where he's talking about titanium materials and how he really feels that advocating for himself to get titanium was critical because he knows it's going to last longer and not have to replace the frame as often. And then within the manual wheelchair section, we're going to talk about power assist. So power assist solutions for Permobil is a Permobil Smart Drive. The goal of using a power assist solution is to reduce the number of pushes so you can increase your active years in a manual wheelchair, decreasing the force needed to propel. So we're going to give you lots of information on how power assist can be used to create proactive health solutions. It can go on a wide variety of wheelchairs, rigid, folding, manual, tilt in space. And then also, no matter how you push your chair, your upper body, your lower body, one of each limb, one limb, you can use this power assist solution. You can control the power assist device with a Bluetooth wristband called the push tracker. You can also add switch controls to both of those fully programmable. And Smart Drive, it goes up to 330 pounds without weight capacity, without changing your wheelchair configuration, seat slope, camber, center of gravity, all of that. I'm going to keep going here, but I want to make sure I see Brenly is alerting me of my time. So a couple more minutes and then we'll do our Q&A. So in terms of seating and positioning, you're going to see a highlight on back supports, wheelchair cushions, talking about materials, covers, hardware, amount of support you might get. We'll talk about accessories like hip guides and headrests and why you might need an elbow block. And then there's a little section on mattresses and the importance of protecting your skin and posture when you're in a vehicle and on bathroom equipment. Just as an example, under cushions, if you think a positioning cushion would be the best option for you, the benefits of this type of equipment will allow you to hold your pelvis in place and create stability, allow you to transfer easier and control the body position, and increase your stability for reaching and leaning. It is emphasized in the handbook that seating accessories and secondary supports work alongside your cushion and back support to optimize positioning, comfort, and safety. You want to think about, how am I going to get this strap on and off? How am I going to unbuckle it? Who's going to unbuckle it? Is it in the way of my transfers, or is it helping with my transfers? So just some things to think about for seating and positioning. We can see here that Julie tells us about her Agility carbon back is sleek and light and seamlessly attaches to my chair, so she feels supported with every push. And that's the importance of really selecting the appropriate back support as part of an entire solution. And then what a lot of you had questions on, there'll be a brief chapter on funding considerations. The emphasis here is that clinical and medical documentation are required to match you to your technology. Without proper documentation, it's really hard to get things that might be out of the box paid for and covered. Your equipment provider or equipment supplier is the one that obtains that prior authorization, submits and bills insurance. Just because you get a denial, that does not mean you will not get your equipment. There are so many routes of appeals that you can go through for specific equipment, but know that will increase the time to receiving your equipment. So make sure that you have that considered as you're deciding if you're willing to wait for a denial and appeal process. We got lots of questions about titanium, standing, Smart Drive, and what what does it mean when someone says least costly alternative? We'll answer some of these questions in the Q&A, but you'll also find those answers in the guidebook, little teaser there. We have resources where you can reach out to us, Permobil, for alternative funding sources in the US, things like vocational rehab, setting up an ABLE account, which is a savings account. Permobil Foundation has available for alternative funding. In Canada, you have the MS Society of Canada, Easter Seals, which is in US and Canada. You have a lot of province-specific resources, and the handouts that are in your handout tab are the alternative resources for both US and Canadian funding. So there are 2 different handouts that are attached for you. Then the 7th chapter is really about your empowerment and resources that you can use to participate in policy change. If you're not happy with something, if you don't understand why you can't get funding for something, this is a section that can really support you and give you opportunities and outlets for investigating that. As clinicians and researchers, equipment providers, manufacturers, we can speak really loudly about the importance of standing and titanium, but lawmakers and policymakers need to hear from you and why it's important to you. Both US and Canada both have specific resource or funding emails, US_funding@permobil.com, Canada_funding@permobil.com. The wheelchair handbook will have all of these listed out available for you, such as the United Spinal Association in the US, things like the Canadian American Spinal Research Organization in Canada. And then lastly, what's next? This is where we talk about fitting, delivery, training, follow-up. So we talk about repairs, what your responsibility is, and what you would go to your provider for. We talk about using smart technology, connected technology, to learn more about the health of your chair, learn about the maintenance. All equipment requires maintenance. Ask about durability of your equipment. Your equipment provider, of course, is the primary contact for mechanical, electronic, performance-based equipment issues. If you have changes within yourself and your body, then you would return to your physician, most likely to your clinician. So if you have a new pressure injury, if you have pain, if your posture's changed, we'll have resources where you can access basic maintenance. You can always access maintenance through your owner's manual or user manual. We have a section that just talks about cleaning and disinfecting cushions, cushion covers. And then a little section on resources for learning wheelchair skills. And that's, again, part of that fitting and training section, where even if you have the best configured wheelchair, we still need to help and make sure you feel comfortable and confident in how to use that equipment. So all of that, we're going to go ahead and start with some of our interview questions. I see we have about 22 minutes, so we should have plenty of time for our interview questions, and then also for some of our Q&A that you all provided us with. So if Amy is available, I am not seeing my webcam for some reason, but
You're on.
Amy, are you there?
I can see you. And
I'm here.
I can see Amy.
All right.
You guys are good.
So the first question that we had for Amy was, why do you think it's important to be an informed consumer when you are selecting seating and mobility solutions?
For me, the reason why would be so that I have knowledge of what is out there. So if I only had seen chairs that might have been in a hospital setting that were folding frames, if I was a new user, I wouldn't even know what a rigid frame is. So it's like buying a car. You don't just go to one place and decide this is what I want. Honda, that's all I know there is. You kind of shop around and do a consumer report and try to find out what's best for you and your environment. So I mean, being informed is definitely key to getting exactly what you want.
Excellent. I love the car comparison. There's just as many options for wheelchairs sometimes as there are, maybe more as there are for cars, right? Your trim package and all of that kind of thing. So I know that you really work hard as a peer mentor and peer advisor, helping others that are new to the process of getting equipment or using a manual wheelchair. Why do you think it's so difficult to understand this process?
Well,
Or what challenges are there in understanding it?
yeah, in the rehab setting where I would go in and talk to somebody, I mean, I think that they're just so overwhelmed with their new bodies and how they're taking care of themselves. And then to add on top of it, I need to make this huge purchase that's going to affect my entirety of life. So there's a lot of moments where there's just so much information coming at them at one time that they can't even process what tomorrow is going to look like. And and so it's really important that, you know, I come in and I actually have a chair that I absolutely love. So if I can come in and show you, this is what it could look like. I mean, you might walk out of here, who knows? But if you do see somebody that's happy with some equipment, that's key to ask them, like, how did you get that? Where did you get that? So I mean, it's super important just for anybody to know what the equipment is going to do for them in the long run.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up, you know, that time frame for making a decision. You know, 20 years ago, if someone had an illness or an injury, they may have had 6 months in the hospital to decide on something, and now you're having to decide very quickly, and it is a very complex process. So it's okay to ask questions of your providers, of your clinicians, of your peers, because it is a complex process. So when we talk about funding, you know, this can get tricky because there are so many differences, US, Canada, funding sources, but were you ever was there ever a time that you were not offered a solution based just on cost or funding? And if so, what did you do in that case?
Absolutely. I think almost everybody who's a chair user, an end user of some sort, has been denied something that they wanted. So for me personally, I reached out to companies. For example, if I wanted something, a special pushroom on a wheel, if my insurance would deny me for that, then I could call the company direct and ask if there's a program that they offer, so that you know, back in the day when there was layaway, you know, do you offer
Yeah.
anything like this? And then I would also do research to find out, are there grants? You know, luckily, like today, we have the Permobil Foundation, where if you're denied, then you can submit it to the foundation, which is, I mean, a great organization that I personally get to be a part of. But back years ago, you know, things like that were not there. So just constantly reaching out to not just your doctor, not just your clinician, not just your person that's selling you the chair, but call the company direct. Ask them. They know.
Yeah, and they might be able to point you in the direction of a diagnosis-specific resource, a state-specific resource, a province-specific. So it's a great place to start. Thank you. And I love, just don't give up. Keep pursuing if you think that it's really what you need. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you wish you would have known about your equipment that you kind of had to figure out on your own, without a guide like this, or without a therapist or a provider?
Um, yeah, certain things. So, for example, I was pretty heavy when I have been heavy in times of my life, and so there is ways that the equipment is just cumbersome. So, for example, if your arms are way out and you're pushing like this, and then your shoulders become compromised, and they don't. I wasn't really informed of a lot of the things that make your chair change. I just thought once you get in a chair, that's it. You're in it. That's how it goes. But and you're uncomfortable. But there is a stage of becoming very comfortable with your equipment. And I kind of wish I had understood that your equipment will stay constant, but you will continually be changing, which makes it where you might need different equipment.
Yeah, I love that, because a lot of equipment can adapt, right? Maybe not the complete frame, but maybe it's the height of a back cane. It's a type of back support. It's the width or the depth. You know, not everything's adjustable, but there definitely can be little things that can help.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this this handbook a little bit. I know when you reviewed this for us, you were like, "Oh, this would be really helpful." How do you think it would have helped you when you were selecting your first chair?
Oh my gosh. Selecting my first chair was just an absolute nightmare. And for some reason, I do not know why, they want everybody to be in a gigantic chair, which, you know, as you know, years have progressed, I've realized that that can be damaging in ways. If there had been a handbook, then I could have found the resources that I need. You know, instead of having to call somebody, it's like a telephone book. You open it up and there are resources that you can call right in the book. And it's the step-by-step process of, you know, this is what this chair is and this is how you can use this. Like, for example, I'm not a power chair user, so I really don't know a whole lot about them. I can say I do now because I've been watching a lot of these webinars to get informed, but you know,
Right.
there are so many different pieces and parts that are moving on a power chair that if I were to order that today, I wouldn't know anything about it. But if there was a book that I could look at that would tell me, oh, that's what this is, then it's just an amazing tool.
Thank you. Yeah, we hope it's a good start. Of course, we always want to add more to it as we learn what people need to hear about, but I'm glad that you do see it that way. And I know you said it's like kind of always a learning process because there's always new equipment, right? Is there a different perspective? Do you have different needs now that you're, quote, an experienced in this equipment process? Or are you really kind of, do you feel like you're starting like over every time, or are you building on that knowledge?
I think building on that knowledge would be a great way to describe like where I'm personally at. So I'm in a new chair. I loved my last chair, but when I got it, uh, over the few years that you have to have one, I kept finding little things that I wish I had a little more dump in my chair. Like I've been ordering completely pretty much non-movable rigid frame chairs, but I would think, gosh, just a little bit more dump and I probably wouldn't fall out of the front end very much, you know, or my backrest
Yeah.
is just a little bit more adjustable. And that's one of the things, like I wrote down a note to myself. I'm at a point where instead of worrying about how to get new equipment, it's worrying about how to get equipment that's perfect, that I do not have the desire to continually keep getting a new chair. I love the chair that I'm in. I have tweaked it so many times to make it completely perfect that I'm now no longer trying to figure out how am I going to get this paid for. I'm trying to just live life.
I love that. That's perfect. And I know we saw the poll that we have clinicians and providers on the line. You know, do you suggest that based on what you read and you previewed, do you think that this would also be helpful for other people outside of the consumer or the person that is using the equipment?
Well, absolutely. I mean, for, you know, a great example would be a child. Mom and dad are going to need to know how to order this. And then, you know, just taking measurements. If you're completely confined, you know, and you are somebody who has to have assistance for everything you do, you're going to need somebody to know how to measure circumferences of these chairs. Will it fit in the places I want it to go? So, and, you know, I wish sometimes that the people that I ordered my chair from would have read this manual, because when I say I want this and they in turn say, oh, you can't have that, your insurance won't pay for that, but why don't we try it? You know, it's one of those moments
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I think that we should at least get it denied before you tell me I can't have it. So if they had this to go through, they might see some things where their eyes are a little more open in the ordering process. No two orders are going to be exactly the same. So it's kind of like reinventing the wheel with every single person that comes in.
Yeah, and our providers have a tough job. Like they are fighting that funding day in and day out. As a clinician who's involved in the process, you know, that clinician is like a neutral party, no financial relationship. So, I love that there are clinicians on this call and that a lot of you guys get your resources from clinicians. And, it is a team effort and it's always changing. But if you stop asking, then the options are going to stop being given. So it's, it can be uncomfortable, I would assume, I would imagine, to keep asking questions, but from the experience that I've had as a clinician, I do think it's a critical part of the process. Perfect. Well, Amy, we're going to go through a couple of questions that were provided ahead of time, and then we'll see if anybody has some questions live. So a lot of people asked if their wheelchair, how do I know if the wheelchair will fit in your living space or vehicle? So a lot of manufacturers will provide basic specifications, the base width, like for a power chair, the base width, the base length, seat to floor height, but your provider will really need to help you to understand things like how does your cushion impact the floor to the top of your head height for getting into a van. So before finalizing your equipment, you do want to think about your vehicle and your home environment because a lot of that will vary. Someone asked, that they got a Roho cushion, but it was a little bit different than a previous Roho cushion. And how do I know what the differences are? Obviously, you can go to our website and read about that. But also Amy, do you mind to mute for just a second? I'm sorry, it might be me. Okay, cool. If you have anything, hop back in. I just was getting a little feedback. I get distracted. But your owner's manual or user manual is a great place to start on how to adjust and set up your equipment. A lot of people asked about where do I get repairs done, and do I go back to the original provider? Do I go to a new provider? And for the most part, in general, again, generalities, during the warranty period, which is varied across all equipment, you do want to go back to your original equipment provider. If for some reason you've moved, you've relocated, after that warranty period, you really can work with whatever equipment providers in your area. There's a lot of national companies and independent companies that have multiple locations. So always go back to your original provider and then work from there. I love this question. Where can I bring my chair to be washed? Maintenance is critical, but maintenance is more than just tightening loose nuts and bolts, right? So just keeping a chair or a cushion or cushion cover clean will extend the life of your equipment as well as the ability for that equipment to perform how you want it to. Basic things like cleaning off the dirt, cleaning off a spill, that is really on you as the consumer. So as far as washing the equipment, I would recommend partnering with a local school, community, civic community, religious community, have kind of a wheelchair cleanup day. Remember, don't just spray things down with the hose. Usually wiping with light cleaning solutions is the best option. I do want to also say that some providers will also assist you with this as part of a service call. So just kind of ask those questions when you are deciding on what equipment provider might be helpful to you, or you might want to select. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. But it is really a team effort. If there's any questions for me or Amy, Brenly, that you want to go over.
Yes, there are a couple, and then we'll close out. So Amy, I hope she's still here. I saw her picture go away. One suggestion, there she is. One suggestion is suggesting, and I'm assuming, suggest for consumers to go to any expos or shows as possible. Pay attention to other people's chairs, and if you see something cool that somebody else has, go up and talk to them and ask questions. So Amy, do you have any comments on that?
I mean, that is just basically what I have done over the years. The expos are amazing because they have anything you can pretty much think of. And there's a lot of support groups on social media pages that you could hop in and say, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? What are you using? And then just being in a community, find your United Spinal Association or something like that, where there are people around. Just get involved with people from the disabled community, because they're the ones who know what you're going to like, pretty much, because they use it.
Awesome. So yeah, you agree, and I think we both agree that obviously what other people are choosing and using and how they've gone through the experiences is probably one of a very valuable thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you personally might meet criteria for funding or need that that device or feature, but it is definitely something to discuss with others around you. Do you, either of you, I guess, if there's a factor in trying to get the consumer to connect with their qualified ATPs vendors to get the best piece of equipment, how do they get to the right people to assist them?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer from my perspective in the US, and Brenly, if you have suggestions for Canada, go for it, and then I'll hand it to you, Amy. But the first place to start is if you have, for example, private insurance, you want to find out who's in network, just like when you would go to a doctor's office. So you first start with that to find out who is in network and who is able to bill your insurance. The other option in the US is we have an organization called RESNA, RESNA, and they actually have the ability to find a wheelchair expert, which is called an ATP, by zip code. So that's a really great place to start as well. And then Brenly, I don't know if you have any Canadian resources.
Well, it is different in every province, and it really depends on if it is a provincial funding agency, they will have guidelines in regards to what vendors or suppliers are approved to be able to go to, to utilize that funding agency and be able to bill. If you're not 100% sure, your local equipment vendor is a good place to start, and or your therapist that you are working with. So one or the other will help to direct you in the right way. Amy, do you have any suggestions if you've ever been in that? Sorry, go ahead.
Permobil can assist you as well to let you know
Absolutely.
Providers in your area that we work with on a consistent basis.
Amy, have you ever been in that situation that you're either not sure where to go or weren't with the right people, or do you have any suggestions for our consumers on board?
Just for myself, I mean, I don't go to just a regular general physician to try to get a chair ordered. I see my physiatrist, and this is their specialty, and they know a lot more than even I know about who to get in contact with. So I have just a good open line of communication with my doctor and her staff, and from there I'm able to get to the right people.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so going to an orthopedist versus a PM&R doctor, physiatrist, they are rehab doctors. That's what their specialty. So if, that could be a great opportunity to look for a specialist and not just go to an orthopedist or a neurologist that sees everything and everyone. Go ahead, Brenly, awesome. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just looking at the time, and although I'm sure we could have this discussion forever because, this obviously is a hot topic, we're going to wrap it up. I am going to thank both Jenith and Amy. Thank you so much, both of you. Amy, thank you for your perspective. Obviously, Jenith, thank you for all your hard work. I was also a part in this project. There's a number of us. We are super excited about this handbook. Cannot wait for all of you guys to be able to see it. So like Jenith said, in your email, you'll have a link of how to get a copy of it.
I was just going to say, and you guys did a great job contributing to the content today by answering questions ahead of time. And you gave us lots of good ideas for future webinars. So your suggestions are not unnoticed.
And Amy, thank you so much. Any last words for our consumers that are on the line?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on and seeming to value my opinion. But for those of you that are consumers, you're on the right path. If you're just starting with this webinar today, you are completely on the right path. Keep going down this journey, and I hopefully will see you somewhere along the way.
Thank you again. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Hope to see you all soon, and we'll see you next month on November 10th.